Steve Gillmor in slow motion.
Thank you.
Long enough for a lower third, and now we start the show. This is the Gillmor Gang. I'm Steve Gillmor, and now we're going to talk to, from Massachusetts, Denis Pombriant.
Yes. Hi, Steve. Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here today. Hi, Brent. And so there.
Excellent. And you were waving at Brent Leary in Georgia.
Yeah, that's me. Yep.
How's that going, Brent? The Georgia thing.
Oh, I thought you talked about being Brent Leary. Georgia, just keep your mask close to you.
Isn't there some legal shenanigans going on down in that state?
When is there ever no legal shenanigans going on in that state?
Okay. So. Well, we're going to count on a report from you. Okay.
You can count on whatever, but
I'm not going to get it. In other words. All right. In the state of Washington, which is not the city of Washington, that's Michael Markman.
How do you do? This is the state of Washington, where it is a little bit overcast. My background photo lies.
Okay, and just back from the sunny state of Mexico is Keith Teare. Welcome, Keith.
I'm happy to be here. You can see how flushed my face is with being exposed to Del Sol.
Wow.
Hey, Keith, I wanted to just ask you real quick. Did you see Ted Cruz?
Did I see Ted Cruz? Is that Ted, Cruz, as
No,
in?
It's Ted Cancun Cruz.
I did not see Ted Cruz, but I wasn't trying very hard.
I don't think there were any power outages in Texas. There's no reason for Cruz to be there.
Well, there's power outages in a number of states, actually. And rounding out the gang from New York is Frank Radice.
This is my swan song from the Big Apple today. Hello, guys. How are you?
Oh,
hello and goodbye.
And
How bad?
Look, I've said before, I don't want to sell this place, but I don't really have a need for it anymore. And it just feels like, if I don't need it, why keep it? It's just something, it's just an albatross. I love it, but I have to sell it. So I'm out of here.
And London awaits?
London awaits. I've got 2 apartments there to sell, one of which we've already sold. So as soon as I'm no longer a land baron, I'm going to buy a nice flat and live comfortably until, whenever.
Wow.
That's a cheery thought, yeah. Even
hey, you know what? I'm a realist. I want to be comfortable, and I just want to be fat and happy. My wife won't let me be fat, but she probably won't let me be happy either. Now that I think about it.
Luckily, she's not watching.
Oh my God, I hope not.
Okay.
Okay, there you go. You got enough for a lower third?
A very lower third.
Yeah, that's what she said.
Okay, so
Wow.
let's look at the list. Okay, so I don't know.
I got 2 things. Just saying.
that's what she said.
This is high stakes poker, audience.
Oh, listen,
At
I
this
win. I
moment,
win.
the show could go in one of 2
I win.
directions.
Dead air is my friend. I don't care. Yeah, go ahead, Frank.
So YouTube is worth more than Netflix, and mainstream media is getting they're in a lot of crosshairs right now for the way that they've been covering the Delta variant.
Let's go to that one.
Yeah, that one's first on the list.
Yeah, it just seems to me like here's what I don't get. They've been talking, everyone in every strategy meeting has been talking about how to cover this story. how not to get wrapped up in the misinformation, how to try and at least, without saying put a spin on it that will encourage people to get vaccinated. That's pretty much what they're saying, except for the three outliers, Newsmax and OAN or AON and Fox, although maybe even less Fox now than ever before. But the mainstream media is getting nailed for this, and they, as rightfully they should be. And I know they talked about this. I'm not quite sure how this ended up happening. Probably because, you know, it's the same, if it leads kind of mentality.
Yeah, I have, and that's my theory. My theory is clickbait is its own dynamic. Headlines have to be dramatic, and people read headlines and not stories. So when you have information that is nuanced and careful, you can't slam it into a headline, especially if you're trying to get people to click on that headline.
Well, but they're also, I think, and because I've noticed in a number of American newscasts that I've been watching, where the large graphic is a clickbait headline, and the content of the spot is not necessarily a clickbait headline. So it seems to me that those are the kinds of little things that mainstream media could avoid.
They could, but they're all in a race for viewers and clicks and eyeballs, and news is a strange business. It's not just news; it's also marketing.
You know, I spent, well, as you know, I spent the first half of my career as a journalist and never cared about the marketing or the business because I was a field producer or a director. I just really cared about the product, stupidly. And until I went into my second half of my life, which was in management and marketing, which made me look back at my time as not management and marketing and go, what the hell was I thinking?
So I find it fascinating that nobody knows what the hell you guys are talking about.
Well, okay.
Because the very people, I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Okay, but everybody out there, they may not know.
If they're watching this show, they know. The people who watch this show follow things carefully.
No, because we've been, I complain about this generally. It's the Chuck Todd effect. In this case, Chuck Todd actually was one of the early mainstream media people to actually try and be careful about this.
Yes,
story.
you're right, Steve. He is. It's not the Chuck. It could be, but it isn't. This is the nightly newses and the MSNBCs and the
okay.
CNNs.
So what is it, Frank?
It is, instead of concentrating on the. I don't want to. This is going to sound weird. They are pitching stories to the public that are talking about the parts of the people who are vaccinated being carriers and contributors to this Delta variant more than they're talking about how the mainstream virus can be stopped by vaccinations. The point is that the content is directing itself in such a way that it's not misinformation, but it's certainly not helpful.
Well,
and I think right now that's bad. But I know what Michael you're saying is the right thing. I totally get it.
I think the new information is that the Delta variant can be transmitted by people who are asymptomatic and who have very mild symptoms, may not even know that they are ill, at a much higher rate than the previous variants. And part of that is because it seems to land in the upper nasal passages and the upper parts of the airways. So even if you're protected, your lungs may be protected, but your nose isn't. So you've got,
and that's what get tested.
So you've got a high transmissibility, but very few people are infected with the Delta variant.
It's 0.08 or something like that.
That is the part that gets lost. So the part that gets the headline is that it is highly transmissible if you're vaccinated. What gets lost is you probably don't have it if you're vaccinated, or if you're living in an area where there's a high rate of vaccination.
So there you go. That would be what I would consider to be a well thought out presentation of the facts. that could be easily
But
understood.
that's not very new, actually. I mean, for months, they've been saying the same thing, which is, guess what? Even if you get vaccinated, you still can transmit the virus.
Well, I don't think that
There's no new
any-
news. Oh, that's been said over.
But no, that's not my point. But the point is that one of the things that needs to be done by everybody is to say the things that people need to hear over and over again, regardless of the fact that you, Steve Gillmor, have heard it 5 times.
Yeah, I don't agree. I think that what I hear is absolutely most important, and everybody else, should be confused, because in fact they're being confused by a media who wants to scare you.
Well, there you go. That's you just explained it.
It's already scary enough.
Well, there's another big story
Information on top of that.
There's another big story that I'm seeing a lot of, and that is people on their deathbed saying, "I wish I had the vaccine."
Yeah.
But that was going to be my point. I mean, insofar as I've noticed anything change, it's been previous vaccine resistors articulating their regret. Not just people who are on their deathbed, but more broadly than that, I think. And it feels as if it isn't surprising to me that if you're vaccinated, you can both catch and pass on not just the Delta variant, but any virus, because a vaccine by its nature helps your body fight, but doesn't stop your body contracting in the first place. So your body is a receptacle for even mumps and measles, but if it was there, but it would kill it. And you could pass it on before it killed it. So basically, a vaccine isn't a shield. It's a body resistance network.
Turn your level up, please, Keith.
Is that better?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
So that's isn't what's new. What is new is that there is a small trend towards getting vaccinated, and that will protect people who haven't been vaccinated from serious illness. That's fantastic news. And so for the most part, I'm feeling more upbeat this week than downbeat.
Yeah,
And
but that's
the
not
outlook, the fact is they're giving them $50 each too.
100.
$100
how did
each.
this get turned around from something that's really, really not good to something that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, because there's a slight uptick by people who too late realized that they should have taken the vaccine.
Well, just because what you hope is that is a flame to a fire, that basically the vaccination.
Yeah, I don't think the data suggests strongly that hope is going to materialize.
Well, we just
It may be responsible for like 1% growth in the number of people who get vaccinated at this point. But how about the 98% who are terrorized by the TV networks into hardening their position and figuring that if they're on the side of denial, that this is just another example of misinformation from the left.
What is this terrorizing by the TV networks? Is it Fox? I haven't seen it. It must.
I mean,
it's the
NBC
other
reported
ones.
this thing as, NBC News, which is like a text service, has mischaracterized this data first and loudly for about a day and a half, followed by the New York Times and then the Washington Post.
What
have
data
they
is
said,
what
Steve?
data?
I generally haven't seen it, so just.
Yeah, this is the report today by people. There's an excellent report in Brian Stelter, is that his name?
Yeah, there's
his
a
newsletter.
There's a great Mediaite story.
And
That's
Reliable Sources, the newsletter, basically summarizes this completely.
Yeah, and the headline is NBC News, New York Times, Washington Post roundly called out for horribly irresponsible framing of COVID cases in fully vaccinated people.
Yeah, so that's the bad side of the news. The good side of the news is we have for a couple of days an increase in the uptake of people getting vaccinated. There's too little data to know if that's a trend or a blip, but it's certainly better than fewer people getting vaccinated.
Well,
Better than
that's
sticking it.
the definition of news supposedly is it's new. And the thing that is the news, or the thing that is very, very optimistic, is what's been true all along, which is the vaccines prevent hospitalization and death.
Well, the other thing that is news is something we talked about in the last show when we talked about the NFL, and that is vaccine mandates are coming into play, not from the federal government, but from private businesses and from municipalities and universities. People are saying, look, if you want to come here, you got to be vaccinated. If you don't want to be vaccinated, you can't come here, or you have to get tested every 2 days.
All right, snap poll. Do you raise your hand if you think that the United States government will mandate vaccines within the next month?
Ooh, really?
That's a
In
good
the
one.
federal government, Steve.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Well, the federal government can.
So in other words, only I think that that's what's going to happen.
Well, but wait a minute, Steve. The federal government can say all federal employees, for example, and might go in that direction without saying that the entire country must do it. And that might happen within 30 days. If there's no downward trend after 30 days or 15 days or whatever they decide, then I would do this poll again and I would vote in favor of
Excellent.
a national mandate. There you go.
Excellent.
That's my opinion.
Excellent waffle. I'll put you down as a yes.
As a waffler?
Dennis,
Well,
what do you think?
something you're not taking. There are two things that we're not taking into account. Number one is that
Can I get your vote first, and then
I voted no. I voted.
there won't be any federal mandate.
He pressed the no button.
I say there won't be a federal mandate until FDA gives the vaccines full approval.
Why is that taking so long, Dennis?
I don't know. I guess they're reviewing. Well, they're not simply reviewing the data from the vaccinations. They're reviewing things like process and how the stuff is made, how it's stored, and the cold chain supply chain. And that's because these vaccines need to be very cold to be stored. So I think that's taking a fair amount of time. And yeah, it's taking too much time.
Wait, isn't that only the Pfizer one? Isn't there Moderna and a couple of others?
No, Moderna needs less cold, but still pretty cold.
Okay, so now you basically said no, it's not going to happen until, and then you gave a date. So I'm going to put you down as a yes.
No,
now, you had 2 points.
You said 30 days.
You can argue with me, but I've already done it.
You said 30 days. So I'm saying, well, if there's approval within 30 days, then yes.
Fair enough.
Why is it that this is?
Oh, wait,
crazy.
I wanted to hear what Dennis wanted to talk about after I insisted on the poll.
There was a second point I was going to make, and I have to do this delicately. The CDC is using a report out of Massachusetts of an outbreak in Provincetown, in which something like 75% of the people who were tested positive for COVID had very mild symptoms or no symptoms, but they still had COVID in their nasopharynx. And then another 25%, some of them were hospitalized, I guess. The thing that's not being said, and I say this delicately, but as a scientist, I would like to know, is how many of these people in either category were immunocompromised. And the reason that it becomes important is that Provincetown, Massachusetts is a well-known mecca for gay people who practice alternative lifestyles. It is reasonable to ask if some of those people are on immunosuppressive drugs or drugs to suppress the AIDS virus. And until we have that piece, I think it's a lot more tricky to make any pronouncements about national mandates.
So Dennis, I'm sorry, Steve. This has been bugging me for a long time. So all of these vaccines are out there. They've all been used. Everyone is saying that without these vaccines, you'll suffer more. There's a supply chain. They've figured out how to deal with the cold. They've had since 8 months, 7 months. That just seems to me, that the FDA ought to say, because let's go ahead and approve this, because I bet you anything, once it's approved, a lot of those people who are waffling will also take the drug. I think that's something that's a missed opportunity.
I think you're right.
Okay, Brent Leary, what's your, you said no as well?
Well, I just didn't do anything because I didn't, you said raise your hand if you're.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a no.
So
I
you
didn't raise my
indicated no.
hand, so, yeah.
Are you in agreement at all about any of these future projections related to full authorization of the vaccines?
Even if Biden said do this, there's going to be so much backlash in court files and all this stuff. By the time they actually gets, actually implemented, it will be out of the pandemic at that point. So.
Well, I don't think he can do that though, because that would put his political imprint on it. It's got to be, they have to do it on their own. Actually, there may be some back channel.
I don't see that happening.
Well, there is the hypothesis that if he mandates it for the armed services, that the armed services will transmit the idea that it's safe back home. And in a lot of cases, back home is a red state.
I don't see that. I mean, it's all politics. Even if the military is forced and it works great, and they say, hey, look, it's great. These people they don't want to be forced. They don't want to make it sound like, well, we're giving in. We're losing the fight. We surrender. These folks don't want to surrender. And it's not surrendering to a person. It's surrendering to a pandemic. They don't even want to surrender to a pandemic because it makes their side look bad. I'd rather be dead than look bad. I don't get it, but that seems to be the point here.
Well, it's not going to happen until the vaccine is fully approved.
Dennis, you make a good point there, though. I don't know if you've ever experienced all of the vaccines that you get when you go into the military. You even experience a whole bunch of them before you even set foot in basic training.
Right.
And I would venture to say that pretty much nobody knows that's getting them what it is they're getting anyway, but they're mandated.
Right. Right, they are mandated, and a fully approved vaccine can be mandated much easier than this provisionally approved one. Unfortunately.
One thing to realize about the mandate is that the mandate, in order to make a mandate work, you need to cross some kind of border or boundary where you say, do you have a vaccine? You can come in or not. Nobody's going to come to my house to find out if I'm vaccinated. But if I want to enter a university or go to work for a certain company, they might ask me if I'm vaccinated. So, I don't even know what it means to say that there will be a federal mandate, unless, you need someplace where you inspect people. And you're not going to go to house and give people shots. That'll never happen. So it's a question of these boundaries, of these things that you might want to do that you'll be prevented from doing if you don't have the vaccine.
Okay, so hang on a second. I just want to get this poll complete. Keith?
So last time we talked about this, I said I was in favor of a mandate, but I didn't think one would happen. I think I'm still there. It doesn't seem controversial to me that society should require citizens to be immune from various diseases that they could otherwise spread. I don't find that in any way kind of overbearing. It just seems common sense. I do accept Dennis's point that this is an emergency vaccine that hasn't yet been fully approved. So there's an element of trust in the long-term consequences of taking it that is not usually associated with a vaccine. So, but I don't think that's what will hold them back. I think it's politics. I think there's a kind of a weakness in our system where popularity appears to be an important criteria of what decisions you think are right and wrong. And I find that to be, at the very core of democracy, the desire to be popular is a weakness, not a strength. You basically have to do what's right. And then if people disagree, they can vote you out. But you should do what's right and have principles. And I think a mandate is what is right. But I think the politicians are a little bit too weak to see that through. We saw it this week with the Democrats, not to change the subject, but not voting in favor of renewing the protection for renters from landlords. There's a weakness at the core.
Yeah, well, the weakness is that Congress is a do-nothing Congress and can't get anything done. But that doesn't mean that specifically that particular lack of getting it to the floor was anything other than incompetence. I don't think that it was directed. I mean, Pelosi said something to the effect, yeah, we just couldn't argue about this enough to be able to get it to the floor, which was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Pelosi tweeted this morning that it has to be done, after they adjourned. So I just wonder what that was all about.
So the reason I brought this up is simply to suggest that at some point, Biden's rationale for being strong enough politically to survive the midterms, and by survive the midterms, meaning not losing the House and possibly gaining seats in the Senate, he's going to basically come to the conclusion that it doesn't matter how much people yell and scream about this. I think he's going to use Keith's rationale, which is it's the right thing to do. People are dying. End of story.
Buried in what you were just saying there, Steve, also, there's so many irons in the fire right now. Set that aside for a second and look at the position that the Democrats might be putting themselves in looking forward. There were two big losses for Trump this week. Five?
I think there were five. But
we're there. Oh, so I focused on two of them. Boy, I'm telling you, there's something going on. There's something in the water.
Well, there were two political losses. He lost a campaign. He endorsed someone for primary, and they lost. And he tried to stop the Republicans in the Senate from the procedural vote to go through on infrastructure, and he lost that. But legally, there were other losses.
The taxes.
There was Barack being arraigned.
Yeah.
It was the release, the release of the notes of his call to the Justice Department.
Right.
It was the permission to release his taxes. I mean, it was a hell week for him.
Yeah.
From your lips to God's ears.
And so who was it that was suggesting that they rebrand? I think it was Donnie Deutsch. Rebrand the vaccine because he's taken so many hits. Rebrand it and call it the Trump vaccine and see how many people take it.
Well, if 1% additional took it, it would be worth bringing that up.
Maybe.
Yeah. This is just a game of numbers at this point. What do you think, Dennis? Do you think that what percentage of deniers would need to take the vaccine in order to make a difference right now?
Honestly, I think potentially it's all of them. I think we're in a very different situation right now than say with polio or with mumps and measles. I think the go forward position, once we eradicate the virus, will be herd immunity around, maybe 75-80%. But to get to that point, we're going to have to totally eradicate the virus. We can't get 100% compliance on the vaccine. We can't get 100% compliance on social distancing or on mask wearing. So this is going to be a really tough slog. If you've ever followed eradication of things like polio, eradicating polio from the earth required at the end people traveling through the hills in Ethiopia and Somalia with donkeys and vaccines on their backs and going to remote villages and saying, here, drink this, in order to get total vaccination. And I don't see it, I see it being a little bit better here, but there is that quality of the situation.
Yeah, and I think you raise another interesting point that even if we could raise the compliance in the United States, there's still the rest of the world. There, we are still looking at places where 2%, 5%, 10% of people have vaccines because there simply aren't enough vaccines in existence to inoculate everyone.
So, Brent, I just have to say that I admire your new camera, and the one thing this show really needed was a good view of the back of your head.
No, but see, I'm watching you guys on the big screen. I mean, does it make you guys feel bigger?
No,
I like that.
Right
yeah, pan that camera to the right and tilt it down a little bit, please.
No.
Yeah,
let's see what's really cool.
I think we're going to have some recidivism about this. What?
When you see that view, so you got Denis. Well, see, there's a little latency. So on my laptop, you see the 6-box look. On the big screen, you see whoever is talking, and then on my little my iPad, you see all the view that I see from that third camera. So I go to this guy, then you see me looking normal. But when I'm like really into what you guys are saying, I like to have the big screen on and me looking ponderously.
Yeah, and since this is 98% of your look,
that's great.
I think it's an improvement. Yes,
but you know what? He does have the BBS now. It is the Brent Broadcasting System, and
it's
there's
the BLT.
It's the BLT. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. BLT.
I'm hungry.
The T is for theater, by the way.
But what is this new gear you bought? You bought some new gear. What is that?
Yeah. So I've got way too many wires in my little.
At risk of interrupting this ATEM commercial.
It's not even an ATEM commercial. This is not ATEM technology. This
is a Mars 400.
Well, I was at risk of trying to interrupt it, I guess. Go ahead, Brent.
What are you trying to do? Ruin my sponsorship deal or something? I'm working on that.
Man,
I'm just
maybe get a cut of it.
Oh, well, we'll talk.
Okay.
No, there's just too many damn cables and cords and stuff in here because you got to connect everything with cables and cords. So I was looking for a way to kind of decrease the amount of cables, but still allow me to have different views and so and usually this stuff they do it for the professionals and that costs like thousands of dollars, and we all know I'm not a professional. So I wanted to find something that if they made something that is in my budget that I could use, that I could start doing video streamed wirelessly, so I could cut back on some of these cables. And it's Hollyland, I think it's called the Hollyland Mars 400S Pro or something like that. Anyway, it allows you to connect a transmitter and a receiver. So you have a transmitter connected to your camera, and you have a receiver connected to the ATEM. So they don't have to have these long cables running back and forth between the camera and the ATEM anymore. And it allows you to, start getting rid of some of these cables. So I just got the first one, and I just set it up this morning. Very easy to set up, and it works great. So I can switch right to, this view. I don't know how that's going to look.
As opposed to what?
Well, you can see me on one screen. I'm big, because there's a lag between what's really on and what and now I just switched to that view.
Tilt down, pan right, zoom in.
How come the aspect ratio is border? Oh, there. See, now you're back to
It's wide.
9:6 or
Here's
6:9.
here's the geeky question though, Brent. What is the cable connection from the receiver to your computer or to the ATEM? Is it HDMI or is it USB?
Yeah, you
Look-
have
look at this.
HDMI.
Keith is desperate to try and interrupt us with his own version of the same thing.
This is wide shot. You can both put up your wide shots, man. We can't even see you.
Just trying to narrate here.
Here's my wide shot. Can we give you one of these?
Hey, here's my close-up right here.
See, when you do that and it's on my big screen, I kind of get a little frightened. But I'm just.
I got a Chinese menu here. I'm gonna read it while you guys are talking.
But my one is using NDI wireless cameras without any HDMI going into the ATEM. So mine is also got no wires, but also got no ATEM. So I've reduced your desk one step further, Brent.
Oh my God!
I still want the ATEM.
I think Keith gets the gold, Brent gets the silver.
No, I just disagree.
What the hell did it?
Keith's explanation is so complicated that he hasn't even started it yet.
I'll just do my look. From now on, I'm just gonna go to a studio.
Well, you could buy a studio once you've sold your property.
Exactly. I'll just buy myself a studio. I'm gonna
Or
outfit,
your ATEM, collection.
Yeah, I'm gonna outfit one of my rooms and hire a couple of guys to come in and.
All right. So Frank's got a hard stop looming here. So I just want to ask him the one. Where's my list? Thank you.
Yeah, I got to do a.
I'm getting
COVID
strung
test
out on this now. It's not
for
a good thing.
my
All
travel.
right. So what do you have to say about Scarlett Johansson's or Johansson or whatever, her lawsuit against Disney? I think it's pretty amazing.
So I think it's pretty amazing too. It's a huge story. It's going to create a lot of waves. It's going to make a lot of noise but for both the actors and the streamers and the corporations and the unions. It's just going to make a lot of things happen.
Right. Well, but quick summary. She was compensated in her deal. I'll do it.
Yeah. All right.
She was compensated in her deal for box office receipts, and then they went out and split the market at best,
Right.
and lost her about $50 million, and now she's unhappy about that.
So a couple of things about that. It's going to open up. It's always a rights and clearances thing. It's always a residual thing with these guys. And the fact is, you don't know exactly what was said. What are the words in her contract that makes the Disney people feel so confident that they can't lose this? I don't think they can win this. I think they will settle because, but I also think it's kind of interesting. I think Jason Momoa just had something come out that also came out on the stream, and he didn't make any effort to try and retrieve the streaming residuals rights and royalties and from then. So he took it only in the box office. I think it was Jason Momoa. It's very interesting. A lot of people are holding their breath on this one.
Let me ask this question, because I think it's a big story, but I think it's a temporary story, because at this point, contracts will be written differently.
Yes.
So it's all going to extinguish. I mean, the Black Widow movie happened to happen at the boundary when the contract was written, expecting a theatrical exclusive release, and now we're in new territory. So it's all going to extinguish shortly as new contracts are written on new terms.
This is the tip of the spear right now. That's just sort of the first thing that's happening, but exactly what you're saying, Michael, is where we're going to end up. This is just the first one, and it just happened that it was a perfect storm. So you had the movie being created, waiting to distribute and release, and COVID all happening at the same time, and the streaming boom happening at the same time. I still think that in the streaming world, there's an awful lot of angst. They're still trying to figure out who they are and what they are. As you notice, you never know what streaming numbers are. Most of these companies don't tell you. They don't say, well, this show did so great, that show did so great, give you the ratings like the TV networks do, for a whole bunch of reasons.
Maybe you have some insight into this. Why didn't Disney do anything about renegotiating when they realized they were going to have a different release
Yeah,
pattern?
they refused to talk to her, basically.
Yeah, I
According
think
to
that
the lawsuit. I'm not sure any of this is actually true.
if I actually thought before I even heard that it was literally it was somebody in biz dev that made a mistake. I think that you're going to find out that this was something that happened at a much lower level that is being covered up as they go into this as they sort of pull back into a lawsuit situation. I really think that that's what went on. This was
So
not.
instead of sending out Minnie to talk, they sent out Goofy to talk.
I think so.
Uh-huh.
But the logic in my head is if Disney made this decision and it's impacting her earnings, it's probably also impacting their earnings. So the buried story here is, what drove Disney to have to make that decision, which would have impacted both itself and everyone else that was on contract. So she's not the only sufferer.
No, there's actually a couple of other suits that I don't know that they've been filed or not yet, but they've certainly been being talked about by other actors who have had their films released in this sort of bifurcated new 2021 post-pandemic method of put it out on the big screen, put it out in the stream at the same time.
So
now they're not.
This is also happening in sports. In European soccer, the stars. I don't know if you follow the Lionel Messi.
I've heard that
Barcelona story, but basically they can't afford.
How many of us have followed that? Sorry.
That's how
basically they can't afford the wage bill because they're overpaying the creatives basically compared to the actual pie that's available, and the pie available has both shrunk, and the rules governing how much they can spend when the pie shrinks in soccer are regulated. Obviously in Hollywood it's a pure capitalism, but it's the same problem, which is they're overpaying the creators for the real world earning capacity of the product, and therefore they're going to need to adjust. And I agree with Michael that was it Michael? Whoever said this is going to be a short-term thing because they're going to redo all the contracts. They're going to have to do that, which is what they're doing in soccer. They're redoing all the contracts.
We're in the middle of a learning curve with the industry trying to figure out what to make of streaming, how to use it, how to almost everything about the world of streaming is still we're in the first inning of a 9-inning baseball game. I hate to use sports analogies, maybe the second inning. I just think that everyone's figuring it out, and because of it, all of it's going to change. What we know, I think, as entertainment, the way that we have gotten our entertainment, what we know of that today is not going to be what it's going to be in 5 years. It's going to be different. It's going to go through a lot of changes. I think that there's a business, for example, in streaming. So I say I've got a really good band and I'm playing a gig at the local fire department. In streaming that to a private channel that just has bands on it. So you can have well-known bands, you can have unwell-known. The point is that there's going to be other kinds of streaming and content that's going to become mainstream viewing material. And I think that there's a lot to be done out there that isn't being done yet.
Can I throw out one more theory? I don't know if this is true or not. What if this movie just happens to be a bomb and she wouldn't have had the box office that she expected? And this is a wonderful way to cover that up.
Well, it could be, because right after, I think, the second week, the numbers tanked in the major screen box office, but continued to go up in the $30 an opportunity, $30 at a time to watch the movie at home. But so look, if you've got 4 kids or 6 friends that come over and you've got a 60-inch television screen, you've actually just saved about a few $100s. So they lose that.
I think that's the real hook for this argument or whatever it is. If somebody says, "Can I borrow some money?" they say, how much have you got in your wallet? You don't want to tell them how much money you got in your wallet. So in this case, Disney does not want to have a discussion about renegotiation because they're making money on it.
Yeah, but they're going to have to.
But that's true. But what's going on here? It's a lot like the political situation. You see the incredible testimony by the four police in the January 6th confrontation. And then later that day, McConnell starts coming out and suggesting that he's going to vote at least for the process argument for the infrastructure bill. What's going on here? Why are Republicans suddenly starting to move in the direction of an accommodation that's inevitably going to improve Biden's chances of holding on to the House in the midterms?
Is that,
I can
is
tell
that
you.
the history? So, I mean, supposing you have a situation where something that is hugely popular in the country goes through with only Democratic votes, and the campaign in 2022 is Democrats can do this, Republicans opposed it.
Yeah, no, I agree. There are all sorts of reasons. But Dennis, were you going to answer that question?
I was, but I think Michael is on the same track. I mean, basically, I think the Republicans are trying to have it both ways. I think they're going to try to say there's good infrastructure and there's bad infrastructure. We voted for the good infrastructure. The bigger bill that's going to pass by reconciliation really is going to pass. And to the extent possible, the Republicans, hi Frank, the Republicans are going to elide the issue and try to capitalize on it in the 22 elections.
But as Frank said before,
capitalize on it by crying socialism.
but as Frank pointed out before, this is a
We got the
negotiation.
roads and the bridges, and we tried to stop the other socialist stuff.
Yeah.
So this is a negotiation, and the Democrats are winning on this for reasons that don't appear to be logical, but in fact are. You can say that, oh well, this is this is the destruction of the of democracy. But does that really get Republicans over to vote in your favor? I don't think so. What does seem to be working is this kind of operate by basically beating up on the other guy to the point where they try and change the subject. And I think that's what Disney is doing with this negotiation with Scarlett Johansson. Is they're trying to change the subject because she's got them.
Yeah,
They're making money on both sides of this coin. And
it's interesting though, Steve, when you say she's got them, which is if you examine your own heart and where your empathy lies. I felt the same with the Olympic thing, with the gymnast pulling out, asking there's this big debate: was she right to pull out? And most people say yes, and mental health is a really important issue. But there's a whole bunch of other people who say, you got to take one for the team, and you've got to see it through because that's your commitment to your sport.
yeah, I didn't hear anybody say that.
Oh, tons of people.
Well, it's because you're fortunate enough to filter them out, but they're there.
They're there.
I'm sure they're there, but I don't think being fortunate enough to filter, the right out it's not an accident. It takes a lot of hard work, and then you got to filter the media out that wants to make this into some sort of a fair and balanced joke.
But back to the Scarlett Johansson. I mean, her earnings so far from the movie are about $30 million. It was $20 million a week ago. It's pretty hard to feel like there's a problem, when somebody is doing that well. So
I think when you have a multinational corporation whose brand is happy, to come in and basically say, not coincidentally, women's groups are now entering this discussion. now, dear, you're going to be fine. You know, I mean, come on. This is
Well,
serious, hard. How many baseball players get to sign a multi-million-dollar contract when they're 40? Zero.
No, all I'm saying is, clearly Disney is at fault, no question, and clearly they messed up on the contract. So I'm not trying to rediscuss the rights.
No, I'm not. I'm not going to rediscuss that. That's not
Yeah.
my point. My
Yeah.
point is that Disney has got a public relations problem now, which I think the tell of that problem is that they're making money hand over fist on home viewing, which is not only not going to go away, it's going to dominate. And their big problem is they've got a lot of contracts with talent, and above the line with people that are going to have to be massively renegotiated and give them a real cut. And that's what Scarlett Johansson is doing, is she's getting out in front of that parade and saying, hey, sorry, that's not going to cut it.
You know, regardless of what anyone says, what's going on with Scarlett Johansson and with Disney and with everybody else is just drawing more and more attention to the importance and power of what streaming is.
But then beyond that, there's a bigger story. I don't disagree with anything you just said, but there's a bigger story, which is the total pie for consumed entertainment is going to shrink massively because of streaming.
Yeah.
Disney themselves will be impacted by that. Apple will be, Netflix will be. They'll own the biggest shares of it, Disney and Netflix, is my guess. But
YouTube.
all the other people who are at that same pond, like Peacock and the less, the less good, if you like, streaming services, Hulu, are going to have major problems. And then the people that are not even in that pond, the broadcasters and the movie studios who don't play that game, are going to have bigger problems still. So there's a much bigger... she is the kind of catalyst for a conversation that really is about how many dollars does entertainment deserve once tech makes it close to free to distribute.
So before I go, I want to get back to what I said at the very beginning, and jokingly, which was that YouTube has got more value now than Netflix. I mean, so think about as I leave. Think about that. Guys, I got to go. Thank you very much. I need to go COVID test myself back to the UK.
Take
Good
care.
luck.
Good luck.
Thanks. Oh, I'm
Good
fine.
health.
Perfectly fine.
See you
See you
from London.
I'll be the next week when I see you guys. I'll be back in wet London. 'Cause
Blighty.
It's raining right
correspondent.
now. Exactly.
So
Thank you, people. Gangsters. Chow mein. Bye, Tina.
Ta-ta.
One thing, Pete, Hulu is Disney.
That's
I
true.
know.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but what a mess. I buy the Disney bundle with Hulu, ESPN, and Disney Plus.
I can't go.
Me too.
And there's a fairly big reorg needed in that space. And Disney is not all good. It's good. There are good bits to it, but it's still messed up.
It is in Europe. Interestingly, they're doing it all under the Disney brand. They don't have a separate Hulu brand. So that's something we may be seeing in this country eventually as well.
ESPN is probably the most undervalued of the three, because I think streamed live sports is coming real fast now, and everyone's going to play there, including Amazon. I guess Apple end up playing there. I think everyone starts playing live sports, and the bidding for the live streams to the leagues is going to go through the roof.
Yeah, look at what's happening. I'll inject a little sports in here. Probably, I don't know if you guys are into the big sports, but maybe one of the biggest news stories of the week is how Texas and Oklahoma left the Southwestern Conference to go to the Southeast Conference to create an even bigger super conference. And part of that, I think, is because of just what Keith just said. I think it was ESPN had a contract with both the SEC and I think it was just the SEC. So they created this SEC network, and it was in partnership with ESPN. And this was all before the streaming took place. The University of Texas, they were so big, they were able to create their own, I think it's called the Longhorn Network. And I forget who their media partner was with that. But all this stuff happened before streaming took off. Now, just this week, Oklahoma and Texas told the Southwest Conference that they are not going to or the whatever it is, Big 12, I don't know what it is, that they're not going to renew. And they have already got invites and accepted invites to the SEC. So the SEC has just created the most powerful conference there is. And with all that power, guess what's going to happen? Television contracts and streaming contracts are going to be redone and renewed. And those numbers are going to be astronomical for that organization, because they've got like 5 of the best properties in all of college sports in that one conference now.
Brent, I'm trying to count. I don't know if I see 5 of you or 6 of you on my screen right now.
It makes it easy for Tina, however, and she can be on one shot and not have to do any editing.
Yeah, see, I was trying that out. That's exactly what I did not expect to happen, but look cool.
I like that I can change what Brent is watching on his big screen.
What's weird is seeing myself talk on the big screen and the back of my head talk while I listen intently. That's kind of weird.
Okay, so
I'll go back to this.
no, Brent, I want to stay with you. Thank you.
Okay.
What's this multiverse thing all about, and who cares?
You got to ask your boy Zuck about that, man. I mean, it's like, I don't know. Here's the thing. I was just looking at their earnings report for the last quarter. Facebook, second quarter, $29 billion in revenue, just a little over $10 billion in profits. And that's not even the most interesting part of this story. The most interesting part of their earnings report is, you remember how the big metric for websites were like monthly active users, and how people paid so much attention to monthly active users? Well, they do that. And I think the monthly active user for just the Facebook property was somewhere slightly less than 3 billion, which is an incredible number. Or I think it's maybe 2 billion or 3 billion one. Either one is.
It was 2.8.
2.8. All right. Now they got a metric for daily active users. And Facebook daily active users, I don't know if Denis has it in front, but it's somewhere in that same vicinity. And then they have another metric that they use called family, like the family monthly active users. So that's somebody is going on either Facebook, Messenger, Instagram, and WhatsApp. And I think that number is like almost is over 3. It's like 3.7 billion. That's half the world. That's more than half the world.
Wow.
And they're reaching that. So now it makes sense why he's talking about metaverse or whatever the hell he's talking about. He's got half the world on coming to one of those properties almost every day. It's incredible. I have to give that dude, some credit for being able to pull that kind of thing off, because if you're able to touch half the world every day, people talk about Amazon having a lot of power. You got to look at these guys. Who has more power than that? Who's touching that many people on a daily basis? That's an incredible thing that he's pulling.
That's the chart there. It's 2 billion.
2 billion. Yeah, that's the daily active. Is that just for Facebook, or is that for the whole Facebook family?
That's daily active Facebook users, second quarter 2021.
So that's just Facebook. Then they have another one that has all daily active users for the whole Facebook family of products. And that takes it to a whole, look at that. So that's daily active Facebook users worldwide. They have another one that has all, worldwide use for all the Facebook products. And that number goes up. And then the monthly ones are like 3.6 billion. It's an incredible feat. when they're able to do that, touch that many people every day.
You know what I'd like to know though is if they had revenues of 29 billion and they had income of about 10 billion, what happened to the other 19? I mean, it's not like they're drilling for oil or they're building factories or, you know, punching out electric cars.
Well, they're investing that in the creator economy.
Oh, you should have said so.
Sorry.
You mean Scarlett's getting it?
Hopefully.
I don't know. I think the contempt in Dennis's face for a creator economy is about to rival what it was for NFTs.
And the difference is,
Well, it's not really that. But no,
Yeah.
there he's
yeah,
going.
there's the editorial.
Not funny, thanks.
Is that what it stands for? I didn't realize that. So,
Hey, can I bring up one more thing before we go? Because there's this one thing I put in the Telegram. I would love to, although this is not my show and I'm not a moderator of this show. I just want to make that perfectly clear.
Go ahead, Brent.
But you're moderate.
So I posted a article in Telegram about Tech Dirt, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with Tech Dirt, but it's one of those online tech publications. It's been around for a while. They posted an article that said that they have gotten rid of all Google ads and tracking code on all of their pages, and they make their money, their revenue comes from ads and stuff like that. But they got tired, I guess, of Google tracking their website users, and also Google pushing back on some of their articles that were supposed to do ads and generate revenue. And so they just said, we're going to get rid of all tracking code, and we're going to try to figure out a new work with potential sponsors on new ways to monetize what they do. And I just want to hear from you guys. Do you see this as a sign of something big, a big change, or is this just one company, whistling in the wind?
Keith?
Well, Michael Masnick, who is the editor, has been around a long time, and it is a fairly, opinionated editorializer, I would say. So I do think there's an element here of him leading a parade that doesn't exist. I do think there is a parade, but it's different to this. The parade is more what Apple is doing to Google and what Google is having to do to itself in response, where the pool of tracking data it relies on is being reduced down to usage of its own sites. And everyone's kind of collaborating in a way to enforce that and not adopt Google's alternative plan where they can have data beyond their own sites.
The flock.
So I think what Mike is doing is kind of in line with the trends, but I don't know anyone else who has already jumped the gun, if you like, and got rid of their previous revenue stream, and is seeking an alternate revenue stream. It'd be interesting to see what he does. I remember the early days of TechCrunch. We relied on sponsorships, and at a certain point, sponsorships don't scale. You need to get page view based, click based, or one of those two or both, if you've got the traffic. If you haven't got the traffic, then sponsorships are great. So it's a toss up whether Tech Dirt is in the we don't have the traffic camp, or we do have the traffic and we're looking for an alternate page based or click based way to monetize it.
Well, in the article that Brent posted, Masnick seems to be talking about alternate forms of revenue, such as tips and
Subscriptions, maybe.
and subscriptions. Yeah, at least it doesn't seem that is in Google's interest to promote that transition. I mean, how does Google, who is massively in advertising, how do they make money?
Oh, if that code is stripped off of these pages, I don't think
No,
they
I'm
do
not
make
talking
money.
about the code. I'm talking about the larger question of, I mean, we kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier about this idea of why are the major social networks investing so much in the creator economy?
Yeah, I think in a way, Tech Dirt, if you read the last paragraph of that piece, it talks about how Tech Dirt is one of the few independent publications still around. You know, TechCrunch got sold, Business Insider got sold, you know, Vox is owned by a big brand, and so on and so forth. And then there's kind of a begging letter that says, in order for us to stick around, we need the community to support us. So it ends up being kind of Patreon-ish in that you're asking your readers to support you directly as opposed to indirectly by you putting ads up. I think that's a really hard path to go down. I mean,
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm just what I'm asking is that at the level of the large FANG-like networks and their business model, which is trending more and more toward advertising rather than toward subscription and tipping. You know, what's going on here? Why is Spotify spending so much time on unifying their social audio and newsletter and ... Why are they doing this? Is there really an economic end game here that makes any sense?
I don't think they know what it is, but I think the answer has to be yes. If you've got billions of people, which you do, consuming content from, let's say, hundreds of thousands of creators, if not millions, the value measured in terms of attention being garnered across that entire ecosystem of micro communities and beyond is huge. What they haven't really figured out is the mechanisms to monetize the attention other than ads. There are paywalls, you know, subscriptions and so on, but they're all small compared to ads right now. It feels to me the answer ultimately is going to be in measurement and cryptocurrency. I think that's where it ends up, but it might take a decade to get there because we're so early in figuring it out, and the leap in the imagination you have to, you know, get paid in New York Times tokens every time you share one of their stories it's a big leap that doesn't make sense to most people yet, but I think eventually it goes there.
Dennis, does that any of that make sense to you?
No, I don't.
That's my point.
Yeah, I think that's right. When it makes sense to me, it'll be mainstream.
So why are they investing all this money now?
Because they can. They don't have a better place to put it.
They can experiment on all sorts of stuff. Because look at all this money they have. I mean, Google made, if I'm not mistaken, 60 billion in quarterly revenue, and I think their net profit for the quarter was 16 something. That's big numbers. And so they're swift. I mean, we're talking about every quarter they're making. Apple, you know, they did 21 billion in profit. So if every quarter you're pulling in 7 billion, 10 billion, 20 billion dollars in pure profit, you can try all sorts of crazy stuff and see what sticks.
Not only can you, but you have to.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, right.
You have a machine. You have a machine that won't run forever, and you have to have a way to replace that revenue stream. It's like, why do oil companies look for oil? Because they have to, because their inventories are constantly
And-
declining.
And Apple and Google are in the perfect position to try to put their stamp on privacy, how privacy is going to be worked, because they've got the most to get from it, and they don't have to, and they have the most to lose from it if they don't have a say in how it works. So it makes sense that they're both, from their different angles and perspectives, it makes total sense that they're the ones pushing it, because they know eventually it's going to happen, and it's better for them to drive it than to be driven by somewhere else or someone
Yep.
else.
Got to get their nose into
There's
the
the
tent.
numbers, by the way. 61.8 billion revenue, 18.5 billion net income, which is pretty close to profit.
Yeah.
But I think the answer to Steve's question is buying attention always precedes monetizing it. So I think they're in the buying attention phase now, not in the figuring out how to monetize it phase. And if podcasts look like a lot of people are listening to them, they're going to buy podcast platforms. And if Clubhouse type stuff looks like lots of people are adopting it, they're going to buy that or build it. And they're gonna just keeping on trying to get attention. And once it's stable, they'll figure out how to monetize it. Like look at Snapchat. Snapchat stock has gone up. I think it's 300 or 400%, maybe even more in the last period, because they figured out monetization and consistent engagement. Their stock went down to $5 at one point after their $20-something IPO. It's now up. Last time I looked, it was 50. I don't know what it is right now. Actually, let me check. Snapchat is at $74, and so the low was $5. That's a huge change.
I have a question for this. Should Facebook be allowed to buy anything else that gives them even more closer to 4 billion users? I mean, this, to me, it seems like once you've gotten to a certain where you're reaching this amount of people, should they be allowed to reach 7 billion people, like almost every person in the world, through another acquisition? It seems like the acquisitions they've made have been done spectacular for them. But do they need to buy anything else to get another billion or two when you've already got close to 4 billion daily active users throughout your properties?
Well,
I think you have to ask yourself how many cell phones there are out in the world.
I was going to say Android and iOS together, and the kind of non-American Android base in China. If you add those three together, that's everyone.
Yeah, but that's not 7.5 billion people.
No, because there's kids, but it's probably 4.5 to 5 billion.
That's my point. There's a lot of people living on $2 a day that don't have a phone and aren't going to need Facebook. So the practical ceiling for Facebook is those people who are relatively well off enough to at least have a phone.
Yeah, I think they've got 100% of the available audience outside of China.
It's not simply a question of getting more people involved. It's getting a higher fraction of what those people do involved. So,
well, that's where the content comes in,
well,
right?
First things first.
But and that's where the metaverse comes in. It's a whole new thing for their customers to be engaged with. It's not necessarily acquiring new worlds. It's just sucking more out of the time that you have
deepening the
today.
engagement. Yeah.
The movie
exactly.
Ready Player One is probably the best way to answer the question, what is the metaverse? It's a whole bunch of different technologies that allow you to live in a virtual world that is itself in the real world. So you can shop, you can browse, you can engage with people, you can communicate, you can trade in 100% digital world.
No,
You can buy and sell property, including the not funny thanks stuff. I think it's a young person's game, but it's probably quite going to, I'm a skeptic. I think of it in the same way as I thought about interactive TV in the mid 90s. It's kind of barely doable and not very good when you do it, and therefore doesn't stick.
That if you could get rich by betting on, AR and VR and metaverse not happening, I'd like to get some of that.
Yeah.
Hey, don't be surprised if like Facebook tries to make a play for a big sports property to streaming rights, because that's what they need. They've got the people.
That's the
Now they
one
need
place
the more.
the metaverse can work. If you could
Yeah.
log on to the stadium of your home team and effectively have a seat and a view of the game that's as close to being in the stadium as is possible to conjure up, lots of people would do it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Isn't a mediated version of being in the stadium less interesting than switched camera views, where you have a really good director helping you see the details of the game?
To toss
I'd
it,
rather have that myself.
There's a level of excitement about going to the game, but there's also just a level of information that you get from watching a really good TV coverage of the game.
but they'll bring that together. You'll be sat in the stadium, and up above your head, like when you're in a private box, you'll have 3 TV screens, and you'll have the ability to turn on audio. It'll be all things to all people. I mean, that tech is definitely already getting to the point where it's doable.
Amazon Prime is actually, when they did football last year, they did a couple of football games. They actually gave you the ability to run your own. They give you like a certain number of highlights or plays, and even while the main game was going, you could actually say, "Oh, I want to look at that play again," and so it's your choice, and you could watch it when you wanted to watch it, and even they're even experiment with how to do commercials that aren't as intrusive. But let's face it, commercials are damn commercial. But they're trying different ways to do that.
I watched a Man United game in Mexico, and I was blown away that all the TVs around the edge of the stadium, I thought they were live TVs, but all the ads were for Mexican products because I was watching in Mexico. And so clearly in the stadium itself, that wasn't true. So they already are overlaying targeted ads,
Well, that's been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
You think you're looking. You think you look at in-stadium ads, but in fact you're not.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the same technology as, how many yards do you need in order to get a first down? That's not on the field. It's digital.
Oh, the line. Yeah, the first down line. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got to wrap this up. I say multiverse.
Multiverse.
Yeah, that's what exactly. I think Scarlett Johansson is onto something. There's going to be a wave of artist level producers and executive producers that are going to harness the wave of streaming that's dominating now. I disagree with the notion that there's going to be a lot of money lost in streaming. I think there's going to be a lot of money gained in streaming.
Yeah.
And anybody else have any other comments before we wrap this one up, starting with Brent?
I just want to send a shout out to Deanne Reed Vane, because she's done some commenting there on the Facebook channel there. So thanks, Deanne. Did anybody know Deanne? Say hello.
Yeah, well, quite well. She's our oldest daughter's godmother. Other than that, we have a very, very large audience.
Yes.
Keith Teare.
I am fully saturated with content and thoughts, so I've got nothing new to add. And I'm not even going to disagree with your previous comment.
Oh, it's too late. Denis Pombriant.
Maybe in the next show, Keith could explain how Hollywood is becoming socialist with the actors and producers taking over the means of production.
Yeah, that I could do that.
That'd be
If I,
interesting.
if I can't stop him, yes,
That'd
probably.
be, well, that'd be very, very
That's cool.
interesting.
Actors
Oh, I
of the
didn't
world.
say that it wouldn't be
Hey,
interesting.
let's just do a what do you call that telephone thingy?
I actually think that ultimately capitalism has to become socialism because of tech. In other words, the means of production do become free.
Well, that's what Karl Marx was hoping for 2 centuries ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and Groucho later. This edition of the Daily
That's
Worker.
the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Okay, thank you. And Michael Markman.
Well, I just have something to pass along to Keith. I went to the farmers market yesterday, and for the first time, I saw on one of the stands, Bitcoin accepted here,
Oh,
as well as most other altcoins. And then there was a row of 16 logos of various cryptocurrencies.
I wonder if you could say, well, since it's dropped to 30,000, can I get that newspaper for half?
ooh, it's up to 41,000 today.
Ooh.
You haven't been looking.
What time is it? No, I haven't. Okay, so
So that would be the most expensive basil you ever bought.
I want to thank our producer and director, Tina Chase Gillmor.
Thank you. Nice show. Thank you for showing up on a Saturday.
Yes.
Hey, and this has been like an hour and a half. And if you notice, I've been engaged like the whole time.
What's the deal, Brent?
It's in the water.
You must be exhausted.
I want to thank Frank Radice. Hopefully he's testing negative and can go home to where he came from. So that sounded wrong somehow.
Very old England.
It's not what I believe. I want to thank Brent Leary. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Pleasure. I like Saturday. It was a nice change of pace.
Yeah, but try getting everybody to do it again sometime in the 21st century. Okay, thanks to Keith Teare. Welcome back.
Thank you. I also got tested yesterday, and given how the Delta variant spreads, I'm really was relieved that my entire family tested negative, because there's got to be some chance that you test positive.
Thanks to Denis Pombriant.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I love the background there, all that art.
No, those are just pictures.
NFT ready. And
Get my
and
shredder.
Michael Markman, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks to everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.